or not Cole, sorry. Hi, Cole. How are you? There he goes. Or not. Okay. Doesn't matter. Okay, we are recording. Okay. All right. I did submit. What is this one? Sorry. Oh. Oh, guys, I'm having one of those days. Okay. Back to the topic at hand. I did submit your midterm grades. Okay. I did not grade the final submission for the multifunctional furniture yet. For most of you, that's not going to really budge your grade in any way, shape, or form. If you are concerned about that, I have 56 minutes in which to grade it because grades are due at noon for some dumb reason. And I will be recorded for that. I don't care. It is ridiculous that grades are due at noon with no midterm break, like no fall break. It is normally they're doing Wednesday at noon, and they took a day off and didn't give us a week. Like it's batshit. It's ridiculous. So you guys are all fine where you're at right now. I don't think anybody really was really concerning. If you're worried about the grade that you have right now, contact me. It's midterm grades. They're not official. They don't show up on your transcripts. They're more for retention and just to sort of check in and see where everybody's at. I did notice there were a few people that were missing either their critique submission for the furniture assignment or the final submission for the furniture assignment. Now, normally, if you've turned in the critique version of something, submission for something, and you don't turn in the final, I will grade the critique version, okay? But on that particular assignment, it is very, very different between what you turn in for critique and what you were required to turn in for final. It wasn't just minor adjustments. It was completely, it was very different. So if you didn't turn in the final, I just gave you a 0, okay? It's not set in stone. Still have a little bit of time. But as far as midterm grades go, what I submitted earlier is what you have. Okay? All right. Or at least that's what gets reported. We are going to start a new assignment today. Okay? I know this sort of like full steam ahead for this entire academic year is ridiculous. They are giving us 2 months off at winter, which is also ridiculous. But whatever, it's fine. I still don't know how that's going to work. I really don't know how that's going to work. I'm sitting here thinking about it going, okay, sure. My brain just like hits it and bounces right off that wall. But yeah, so we're going to start a new assignment. Let me open it up here. These deadlines are pretty set in stone. Yeah. These deadlines are pretty set in stone. What we're going to be doing for this next one is designing a playground. Okay. The draft is going to be due on the 3rd, which is, what is today? 13th. All right, so that's like 3 weeks. Okay, it's pretty much 3 weeks. I think it's exactly 3 weeks. So that's a good amount of time to do it. Like most assignments, there is a research component. I have videos for you to watch, articles to read. As you can see, there's a lot of reading to do for this. Okay, it's a lot of research. And then in addition to what I've given you here, I would like you to come up with your, find your own as well, right? A big thrust of this, or I guess how we should think about this is decide, there's a couple of different, I have a presentation I'll do in a minute, but there's a couple different schools of thought for playgrounds, okay? There's the school of thought that you treat the playground space as kind of an extended giant sculpture, okay? So it's very designed, it's very crafted, it's very controlled, it's safe, it follows all kinds of guidelines that have come up since the 80s, back in the dark ages of my childhood, when playgrounds were very, very dangerous. They were dangerous. They were. Not that that's a bad thing. So there's that school of thought where keep everybody super safe and control the space as much as possible, and then there's the total opposite end of that, which is complete free play. Right? And then there's stuff in the middle. Right? We're going to look at examples of both. There are artistic playgrounds, which sort of blend the space of like landscape architecture and sculpture. There's the two images at the very top here. These are playground concepts from, I think it's bigger, from an artist, a Japanese-American artist named Osamu Noguchi. He was really, really interested in creating these kinds of, sculptural, to overuse the term, sculptural spaces that were as much for looking at and enjoying as they were for playing on. Landscape architecture will really blend itself with this quite a bit. This concept. There's a lot of sculptors that will also do this as well. But it's really creating spaces that are not just functional and usable, but also aesthetically pleasing. Right? Not just to look at, but to move through. Because that's the thing you always have to remember when you approach space. This is not just something to look at, right? It's something to be used, it's something to walk through, it's something to inhabit. So you have to think about how it feels to inhabit these. Sadly, we don't have a lot of great examples locally that you can check out of stuff like this. Unsurprisingly, I guess. It's a lot. But there are lots of other playgrounds you can check out that are fall on the other end of the spectrum. So there's a couple, let's see, there's articles about him. There's a podcast about his Play Mountain, which is this idea that he tried to, it's this thing that he tried to get made in New York. So these are all mock-ups and models of it that he's bringing and trying to get funding for. And he kept getting shot down. Some stuff about landscape architecture, the idea of playgrounds. So we're going to check out a couple of the videos in class today, these two here, but the rest of it I want you to read. Go through that reading and check it out. Okay? Especially things like these Alexandra Lang articles. She's actually referred to in the 99% Invisible podcast, the Play Mountain one. And she has some great things to say about playgrounds and spaces for kids. Okay. We're going to see this idea of adventure playgrounds, cardboard cities come up. This idea of making playgrounds more dangerous. And this was, you can see a few examples here. This is an idea of creating these spaces and filling them with lots of usable materials. Not necessarily safe materials, just materials for kids to explore with and create with. A lot of research shows that giving kids these kind of uncontrolled spaces, they're somewhat controlled, but these spaces that can be kind of dangerous, where they can do things like use hammers and nails and saws and fire and all kinds of things, helps to teach them to push themselves and to learn how to regulate themselves in a much better way than trying to keep them safe all the time, right? It's very confining to feel like you're wrapped in bubble wrap all the time. You're not allowed to try it. People fail at things all the time. This is part of that process. So you might be able to tell where I fall on that spectrum. What kind of spaces. But we'll watch a bunch of videos and stuff. Anyway, so we're going to do a lot of research, and then we're going to design play spaces for kids or adults. You can do play spaces for adults because that's an area that is not ignored as much as it used to be, but it's not an area that's explored or developed as much. You get things like axe throwing places, karaoke, and laser tag, but those are all also extremely controlled. What you don't get for adults, even young adults such as yourselves, are spaces that are maybe scaled up like a child's playground. We're sort of taught that we should grow out of playing on playgrounds. The only example I can think of an adult playground is like an obstacle. But even then, it's not about playing, it's about getting through the obstacle. It's about doing like a Spartan race or a warrior dash or something like that. So it's still very controlled and it has to be framed in a very certain way in order to not be, but it's never about play, right? It's never about just having fun. It's about doing something difficult and getting some sort of accomplishment, reaching some sort of goal. Like that's the fun part of reaching goals. Kids, they don't give a shit. They just get out there and get on the playground and have fun. And in the meantime, sometimes they almost kill themselves. So whatever. But that's in a nutshell what our process is going to be. Lots of research and then design some spaces. Let's do the presentation first. I get too far ahead of myself. Or let's not do the presentation because apparently I didn't put one together for you guys. I thought I did. I've done this before. Yep, well, whatever. Anyway, so our process, we're going to come up with 5 ideas. For each idea, I want you to write a paragraph description of the type of play space. Again, that type will be a little clearer after you get done with your research and watching the videos. Questions that answer are: who is it for? Why is it important? What makes it different than other play spaces? And where is it located? Not just the city, region, etc., but how is it specifically situated in the space? Who does it serve? Again, this goes back to who's it for. Is it within the city? Is it just outside the city? Think about like Central Park, right? Before Central Park was a thing, it was just more building areas, farms, and a couple other things. And the city was growing up around it. Who's been to New York City? Anybody? You guys been to Central Park? Mm-hmm. You from New York City? No. Not just visiting? All right. How long did you spend? A couple of days? 2 months. Well, a few months. Oh, that's great. Could you imagine New York City without Central Park?
I only went there once, but I guess not, because it's such a big part of the city.
Yeah, it's a huge chunk of the city, right? But think about like all those images and pictures we've seen of Central Park, with the city around it, and then imagine that not there, just more blocks of buildings. Yeah, I saw Emily just kind of like take a deep breath and blink her eyes. It's like, yeah, it's terrible. It's that idea of like not having green space within an urban environment is oppressive and depressing. And so like Central Park was one of the best acquisitions and ideas that the city planners in the city did. So that would be something to look at, right? Because that's a big open space that it is designed and it is intentional, but it's not as controlled as a playground space. But I bet an argument, I would be at least open to hearing an argument that Central Park is a playground of a sort, right? You could probably make that argument. But that's the idea of like, where is it located? Central Park is in the heart of the city, or the city grew up around it, right? Think about all the urban parks that are around here. Map them out. Like, look at a map of Omaha. Start figuring out where those parks are and see how they're spread out. See which communities are underserved. See which ones are overserved, right? Like, you can draw some correlations. I bet there's some interesting findings when you start asking these sorts of questions and finding those answers. So that's a really important one. With these different ideas, these 5, you can include images and drawings. You can make these. They can be collages, they can be pencil drawings, they can be digital, however you want to get this done. Okay. You want other support materials. Maybe you build it in a 3D program like SketchUp, or you could maybe get it done in Fusion. Fusion's more for that stuff. But SketchUp would be worth looking at. SketchUp's pretty easy to pick up, and it's free. There's lots of built-in and included models and stuff. You can kind of just drop them. Maybe you build something yourself, just like blocks. Keep it really simple and basic, and then take a picture of it. Download a 3D scanning app for your phone and scan it. Right? There's all kinds of different things you can do. Like if you built a physical model of it, even a really basic one. Okay? You can take your 3D scanning app and make a 3D scan of it, and then a lot of times they'll have like a rotation viewer in those apps. You can then just screen record your phone and have that little rotation thing in there, and then export that as like a video or a GIF. And that adds a really nice dynamic element to your submission, your presentation for your ideas. So there's, if you just think a little bit further into it, you're trying to, again, I'm your art director, and you're trying to convince me to give you funding to do this project, right? So you've got to think in those terms. You've got to really try to convince me. Come up with ideas that you love, that you feel really strongly about, and then convince me that this is something you want to do. And that's worth doing. And then also include any precedents. So these are similar designs or existing spaces. Okay. So if you're building within a certain paradigm, say it's a free play space, sometimes known as like adventure playgrounds. Maybe it's a nature school, maybe it's a Waldorf, maybe it's a what you love, the contemporary playground design. And so you're doing something along those lines. That's great. It's fine. Those are things to think about and to also try. But you need to include those examples. This is just like citing your source. Okay. So either include links to those the websites that have those sites on them, or include images. Either. Okay. We just need to be able to like trace your thought pattern back. So are there any questions about the process? It's 5 ideas. A few questions to ask yourselves and to answer in a short paragraph. Images and other visual examples of what you want to do. And then precedent. Cite your sources. Okay? This part all happens after the research. So research is first. We have 3 weeks to work on this. Okay? Okay. For submission, for the draft, we're going to present our ideas on Blue Line. This can be a slide deck. So you're going to need your images, the slide presentation. This can all be just compressed and put on the Blue Line, and then through the critique process, we'll narrow down your selection to 2 ideas for the final. Okay. All this will happen through the critiques, the discussion board that's on Blue Line, just like we've been doing. We could even do a little bit in class. I think we'll have the time for that. Right, so there's only 5 of you in here right now. So like Tuesday group can throw them up there and spend an hour just talking about it. Thursday group, we can do the same thing. This class is nothing. Cool. That way we get some in-class feedback. Right? But let's make this, I do want these to be slide presentations. This is the only time you'll ever hear me ask you to make a slide presentation in any of my classes. If you have web design in your wheelhouse and you want to just make a website for it, do that. That's great. But I'm not asking you to slide presentations solely fine. Okay. There's dimensions for the slide presentation. Slides need to be no smaller than 1920 by 1080. All right, so I'm not opening up tiny little presentations with terrible images. Each slide can be an idea, but that is also trying to compress a lot into one. So maybe think about each idea is like 3 slides, probably, right? Paragraph slide with images, and then your other images, your sources. Makes sense? Any questions over this? Cole, do you have any questions? Great. All right. Yeah, we will then narrow that down to 2 ideas, and then for the final, we'll submit 2 separate slide decks, minimum of 2 to 3 slides for those 2 ideas. Just refining it and making changes. Okay. All right, great. All right, Cole, we're just going to watch the videos for the rest of the class, so I'm going to end the Zoom, okay? Okay, let's watch those videos. There's some really fun ones. We'll do the adventure playground one first.